Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Polestar and Volvo. Volvo shareholders approved distribution of the Polestar shares. Finally, we've got some information on this. It says here, earlier this year, Volvo Cars announced a plan to discontinue funding its Polestar electric sports car brand. Last Friday, the automaker shared that they've decided on the final terms and timetable for the distribution of its stake in Polestar to Volvo Cars shareholders. Volvo announced that shareholders agreed to distribute a portion of Volvo Cars' stake in Polestar to Volvo Cars shareholders. This includes, of course, the parent owner, which is Geely. Volvo's board of directors decided to distribute 62.7% of Volvo Cars' stake in Polestar, and based on Polestar closing price at $1.53 on Friday, value transfer to Volvo shareholders amounts to approximately over $976 million. That's US dollars, by the way. Now, we do have a statement as well. And this statement has been made by Volvo. And I quote, the record date for the share split is April the 12th, 2024. And the redemption shares will be traded from April 15th to April 30th, 2024. Shareholders will get the redemption consideration, SDRs representing Polestar Class A ADSs around May 13, 2024. They can convert SDRs into Polestar Class A ADSs from May 13 to August 13, 2024. It also says here Polestar has been facing several different challenges, including delay in key model releases such as the Polestar 3 and 4, and a decline in its stock value by 60% when it compared to April in 2023. This is very, very true. I've spoken on this multiple times that the delay in the Polestar 3 SUV was actually the most sensible thing Polestar could ever do. But this brings us back to Volvo because it's ultimately Volvo's decision because this car, the Polestar 3, it's built on the Volvo platform. That would be the Volvo EX90. This is perhaps Volvo's most luxurious SUV you can get today, and it was delayed alongside the Polestar 3. They're based on the same platform, so it made sense. You know, underneath, it's basically an identical embodiment. But on the surface and interior wise, they look vastly different, especially on the surface. Like the exteriors, you would never think that these cars are related based on the exteriors. It's just quite obvious that they're vastly different. So this is even more impressive that Polestar and Volvo were able to accomplish this using the same platform. This reminded me of the platform that is shared between Porsche and Audi for the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron. Both vehicles look slightly different. Very different, I would argue, because the Audi looks like an Audi. The Porsche looks like a Porsche. But they're both based on that electric platform, which is genius by VW. There was no need to create a new platform. Just use the same platform. But the Audi is a complete Audi, in my opinion. Automakers have always done this. Automakers have always shared parts and shared platform. The Porsche Taycan has a great platform. So why spend millions of dollars developing a new platform for an identical vehicle? In architecture, in visuality, it might be different, but in architecture, it's almost identical, isn't it? So it made sense to use the same platform. And for Volvo, it's quite the same. Now, because Volvo is becoming such a larger brand, Polestar is becoming such a larger brand. Now, you got to realize in this situation of Volvo being owned by Geely, Polestar being owned by Geely, the Geely is basically the VW of China, or one of the VWs of China. And given this, because the company is so large with so many different automotive brands, they'll inadvertently be sharing a lot of resources amongst each other. And this is genius. This is a way you save money and you make great progress because you waste less time developing something that is completely waste of time. The average person doesn't care which platform the car is built on. As long as the car is safe, it works, it has minimal faults. That's what really matters. Especially if it's using a Volvo platform, I'm even more trusting of a Volvo vehicle design because Volvo has been known for designing great vehicles, great platforms. They've been known for being the safest cars on the road, the strongest cars on the road, the most reliable cars on the road. You cannot question Volvo's resume. And if you can't question Volvo's resume, you shouldn't be questioning Polestar's either because they still share so much development, R&D, sales, aftermarket, research. They still share so much in common. You know, Volvo might stop given funding to Polestar, but it made sense. This was always inevitable. Volvo and Geely were never going to remain funding to Polestar forever and ever and ever. That's just completely ridiculous. You know, you build a car company to be independent on its own, but eventually it needs to grow. It's got to move out of its parents' house. It's got to stop asking its parents for money. And so it was inevitable for Volvo to do what they did. And once I understood that, it made complete sense. At first, I was a bit taken aback. I was a bit skeptical, but once I read into it and I understood that this was the way forward, it made a lot of sense. Also, this allowed Polestar to get a lot more external funding. Almost immediately after the announcement came out that Volvo were going to stop providing private funding to Polestar, almost immediately, Polestar was announcing that they have secured almost $1 billion in funding. And apparently they're working on additional 300 million in funding. So they're doing rather good. So I don't think we have to worry about funding anytime soon, especially if they're getting private funding and especially if Geely isn't getting involved. The only time when Geely needs to get involved is if it's an emergency. But I think with this being said, there must have been some showed that clearly there's a lot of banks or institutions or private companies that are really keen to invest in Polestar, especially privately, you know, in such funds, in such loans. So clearly they have great trust in Polestar and there might have been a high demand in this. And this must have gave Volvo and Geely the confidence that, okay, Polestar, it's time to have a bit more independence on your own to get your own funding. You know, come to us when you have a real emergency. We can still work together because you're still the parent company. So, but the funding, it's a huge relief for Volvo because Volvo can now spend that money on Volvo, which is great. Volvo can now distribute that money to shareholders. They could add that to their free cash flow. So this is less stressful on Volvo, and this is good to have less stress on Volvo. The point is, they're helping Polestar in the most important areas, like manufacturing, like research and development, sales and aftermarket. That's key, that's important. And that's not going to change anytime soon. You know, it will eventually change, but not anytime soon. While Polestar continues to gain a more independent footing, Volvo will continue to support. Keep in mind, Volvo is still retaining at least a 17 or 18% ownership in Polestar, so this is great. So Volvo is not silly enough to give up all of their ownership. They give up what they need to give up, and it was sensible. And I've explained this fully that private investors wanted Volvo to give up that part ownership. They wanted less internal control because you don't want to invest in a company and the major shareholders, they're owned by the same company. It can create conflict of interest because Polestar is owned by Volvo. Volvo is owned by Geely. Geely owns a lot of Polestar as well. It creates a bit of a complicated situation. So one of those companies had to let go, and it made sense for Volvo to let go. And it was the perfect timing, I would say. So this is why I don't really question this decision anymore. It's completely understandable. Something else I did wanted to touch on was the Polestar sales in Germany. It's apparently rebounded with 357 units in March. This information was also provided by the Electric Vehicle blog, so be sure to check out this blog. There's some awesome information on this website, especially relating to electric vehicles. It's all about electric vehicles, and thankfully, there's a lot of Polestar articles as well. Now, this Friday, the German Federal Motor Transport authorities released the car registration data for March, revealing that the Swedish automaker Polestar registered 357 vehicles in the country. Polestar achieved its highest sale figures since September 2023 and a total of 641 in the first quarter of the year. Despite this improvement, March figures still fall short of the manufacturer's peak performance since seen in June and July of last year, when it registered 950 and 1,052 vehicles respectively. So this is what that graph looks like. So this is actually really cool. Alfonso really did a good job actually creating this graphics. It's actually really cool. So the monthly deliveries, and you can obviously see like July last year was really incredible. This was in Germany, by the way. And you can see it slowed down, especially going towards November, December, and especially the early parts of this year, January, was very slow to pick up. But now you can see it's gaining momentum once again. So by the time we get to June this year, can we also expect another over 1,000 deliveries? And wouldn't that be great? Especially now that we're getting the Polestar 3 SUV rolling out. We're getting the Polestar 4 Coupe electric SUV rolling out as well. So more vehicles are being added to our portfolio. So apparently the newly released Polestar 3 SUV priced at 85,000 euros, $93,000 in Germany. It's regarded as a pivotal model for the Geely's brand amidst its global slowdown in electric vehicle sales. Everyone is having a slowdown in electric vehicle sales, to be quite honest, which is why Tesla has enacted that price war like 2, 3 years ago. It was very crucial for Tesla to do that because they knew demand was slowing. So electric BEV car registration in Germany saw a 4.7% decrease in March when compared to the previous year, representing 11.9% of new registrations. In March 2024, there were 263,844 registered passenger vehicles in Germany, making a 7.0% decrease compared to the same period last year. Gasoline cars accounted for the majority of new registration at 37.8%, followed by hybrids at 31.5%. Hybrids are really popular, actually. Some people think hybrids is still the future. Some people don't believe in full electricity cars. So that's quite interesting in itself. So listen, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Subscribe to see more. Remember to check out Alfonso's blog. Really awesome stuff. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.